Welcome to the Sage Family Podcast,
where we explore natural, homeschooling, gentle parenting,
simple living, and family adventure.
I'm Rachel Rainbolt, the Sage Parenting Coach, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, where I live wild and free in connection with my 3 wildlings and the Papa Bear and our fixer-upper on the beach. This is episode 58, and today I'm here with Sue Patterson for a special Unschooling Q+A episode. Sue, a homeschooling mom with over 20 years of experience, is also an author and unschooling coach. She helps families who aren't happy with their educational situations to know that they have options. And she does this work through her business, Unschooling Mom to Mom. So join us around the campfire and let's get living the family life of our dreams. I am so excited to announce the new Sage Family Membership, which serves as our gathering space for live monthly group coaching and ongoing community discussion and support. Think of it like the bonfire on the beach of our virtual village. You'll be joining a community where you can connect with like-minded families, and once a month we'll come together for a live group Q&A coaching session on Zoom. This virtual village came to be after years of nurturing the amazing Sage Family Facebook group and hearing your requests to participate fully in that community, but without the Facebook of it all, along with years of serving you wonderful podcast supporters through a monthly Q&A video on Patreon, but longing for that support to be more personal and direct, making it live and interactive. You've all been joining my online course platform to take the bucket system and Sage Money, and this membership lives right inside Thinkific alongside your courses. So join me and all the other new friends waiting for you inside the Sage Family membership at sagefamily.com/membership. Our adventure of the week is the start of spring sailing. The first day was sunny, but the second day was cold and rainy. So I created a packing list with the kids that we taped to the wall to help them get all their gear and layers into their sailing bags each day. Upon arrival, I offered West his outer layers. He declined. I noticed aloud how cold and wet it was and invited him to add the layers that would help keep him warm and dry. My concern is that you feel okay now, but after time out on the water in the cold rain, you will feel very cold. He politely declined. I respected his body autonomy, hugged him big, wished him well, and sent him off for 3 hours on the bay. His coach brought him over shivering on the verge of tears as soon as they docked, and I blasted the heat in the car, helped him strip off his wetsuit and change into the warm, dry layers we brought. Then he rejoined his team to break down his sailboat. After class, his coach came over to recommend some outer layers. I assured her that we did in fact have the layers. They were offered, he declined, I respected his body autonomy, and natural consequences had been experienced. West chimed in that 40-degree weather definitely warrants wearing the outer layers, and he'll remember that for next time. The coach quietly said, "Oh, I see what you did there. That was next level." I I have been following Sue on Instagram forever, and anytime she pops up in an interview, I always watch or listen. She is the mother of 3 grown unschoolers, and I experience it as such a gift to be in connection with wise, experienced women farther down this path than me. So, welcome to the show, Sue.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here because I have watched you too. And it's been really exciting to watch how families grow and relax into things and embrace unschooling and just connected parenting, you know? And
Yes.
I love that.
Oh, see, guys, she's so our people. So, will you introduce yourself and share a bit about who you are and what you're passionate about?
Sure. So we started homeschooling in 1996, a little while back. And my kids were, I was really just kind of a regular suburban mom. You know, I had kids in preschool and public school, and it just stopped fitting like pretty quickly. And at first we were thinking, oh well, we'll just go another year. and and then the critical thing was after first grade, you know, he could already read before he went in there, but after they said, you know, he's so rambunctious, I think he needs ADD medicine.
Oh,
I'm like, okay, that's the final straw.
yeah.
Because, you know, they put him, and he wasn't really a gift. I mean, this is going to sound, he'll say, hey, mom, he wasn't really a gifted and talented kid. He was an average, curious, happy, eager to learn kind of kid.
Yeah.
And that counted as gifted and talented in the school. I mean, they did the test. He was interested in, you know, endangered species. Well, it turns out the gift, when they finally got him into it, because the first year he was too rambunctious to to take the test. The second year they got him in, and the gifted and talented program happened during PE. And this was a kid that needed to run laps around the school. He didn't need to be like talking about, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
So we said this isn't a good fit. And why that long story to come around is just to say, we went into it thinking, second grade, how hard can that be? I gotta be able to do that. And besides, we pay taxes. I can send him back if this doesn't work. In the meantime, we'll have a good time. And every year I just was kind of like, I don't know, I think I want another year. No, I think I want another year. And he never went back. And so that first year, Katie went to kindergarten because I had that mentality of, oh, well, I can't do 2 at once. Like, what had I done? What had I been doing at Christmas time or summertime or any of those other times? But, you know, you just kind of get swept up on that conveyor belt of mainstream thinking, and
Yes.
you don't really pause long enough to say, hey, wait a minute. I don't have to do it like that. So after the second year, Katie was home, and then I still had a 2-year-old, and so we just started living, and that was the way we started. But now they are about to be tomorrow. My oldest turns 32, and the middle is 30, and the youngest is 27. And today is my grandson's birthday. He's 6, so we kind of get to have that whole experience, which is cool. And so I'm here on the other side of all of this, and I found that what often happened is, okay, I have all this information, and what am I just going to do? Go do some hobbies? You know, there are people that really need it. And I was really more interested in sharing this because so many families were in such distress because they thought they had to keep their kids in a miserable situation. And I just was over here saying, you don't have to.
Yes. And all your kids survived.
Yeah, they're all okay. Look. And they're, you know, they own homes and businesses and have relationships and got the education they needed to, went to college, one went to trade school. You know, they did what they needed to do. And they're surrounded, which is also interesting too, in both of those situations where they were in college and then also in trade school and now in the working world, they're surrounded by people that didn't get to have a childhood. They really were like forced to do school for 12 years, like most of us were.
Yeah.
And they're at exactly the same place my kids are. And so my kids got to have this fabulous adventure, and they have, they have regular 20-year-old angst, don't we all? And but just surrounded the same as everybody else. They were at no disadvantage, no doors closed. It was all great. And so I just want people to know you don't have to. Even if you just step off and kind of dabble with it, do it. And the more you do it, the more you see, wow, look at that. They learned and I didn't have to orchestrate anything.
Yes.
And
oh my God. I was saying, I shared just on like an Instagram story on like an IGTV thing the other day that my 15-year-old long time unschooler took the like placement test to get into the early college program.
Oh, that was one of your hot tub things. I think I was listening to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and she got like a 299 out of 300. It's like,
oh wow.
All these kids who've been like locked in these classrooms for all of these years, like she's been out here like living life and traveling and playing with friends and playing video games and yes, all of these things. Like parents are so afraid that their kids, like all the doors will be closed, and
my kids, both Michael did pretty well on the placement test. Katie, well, she just kind of bombed them. And she had been an actress, and she danced, and she worked at Barnes and Noble, and she just so she could take more dance classes and more theater classes. And she did one show after another, and academics weren't her thing. And so she took the placement test and didn't really do well and was totally discouraged. And so we're like, all right, let's just give it another year. We'll come back. And so she went back the next year, and the counselor said, you don't have to test again. We can just put you in the classes that you are at the level for. She's like, oh. Yes. And so he said, basically, in order to take college algebra, you have to take 3 semesters of what but everybody always tells me, don't call it that. I always consider it kind of developmental, remedial, kind of pre-college level. 3 of math, 2 of writing, and 1 of reading. She says, Mom, I traded 12 years of school for 3 semesters of college so that I could take classes. And I was surrounded by people that had sat in classes for 12 years, and they still had to take those classes. Yes. So whether your kids do well or you're like, oh my gosh, she doesn't know her times tables, don't worry about it. They will place them. They want your money. Yeah. They will place you wherever you need to be. And it'll be all right. She says, Mom, nobody's asking me about the quadratic equation, but I know it.
Yes. This like placement test that she took, that's just to get out of the, like you have to have like a GPA with a transcript, or you can make a certain score on the test. And homeschoolers can make their own transcripts and GPAs and submit those too. This was just like the less work option. Like, hey, take this test.
Well, that's cool.
If you get high enough, we don't have to worry about it. But even like, she's been taking this OutSchool class, which is like you said, like remedial math. It's like math review of like K through whatever 9th grade math. It's just like a couple months long, and then they've covered everything.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there a thing a long time ago? I think Daniel Green, he doesn't really write well about unschoolers, but he runs a Sudbury school, I think, and he did a study, and it was like 21 hours was all it took for everybody to get like K through 9.
Yes.
To be able to learn it if you wanted to learn it. Yep. And so, that's always the key, because what's the problem is people, they want to start them early. I don't know. I guess we're just conditioned to think there's some big race, but there's no finish line. We didn't know about podcasts 5 or 6 years ago. We weren't doing this kind of stuff. And yet here we are. And we did, and that's just going to happen exponentially. There's going to be so many more things. There's no way you can prepare them for whatever it is. You can just live in the moment and keep growing and learning. I don't know why I was thinking that, but
yes. Well, no, yes. As long as your kids know how to learn.
Right.
And then they can learn it, instead of like that just in case learning, it's like when
Right.
you need it. Like when you have a desire to learn it or when you have a need to learn it, you can always learn it. There's
And that's the way it works. And I think that
Yes.
that concept of I got to check a box because they have to be exposed to all things because they must be balanced. Well, that looks great on paper for the teacher and for the administration, but it went in one ear and out the other. We know that.
Yeah.
We know
Taught
that.
is not the same as learned.
Exactly. And so,
Yep.
and so somebody says, well, what if all they do is whatever? They'll never learn it. Well, when they need it, they will learn it. And truthfully, if they don't need it, why are you wasting your time?
Yes.
I mean, go
Yes.
have a life. We got no guarantee on the number of days we have. Let's just live it and
Yeah.
enjoy it and connect with each other. And if we need something, there's always YouTube. I mean, it just doesn't take that linear approach that we're so convinced that we have to have in order to learn. You don't have to learn this thing before that thing most of the time. And if you do, then you do it and it's okay.
Yep. Yes, I could not agree more. Okay, so this is going to be a special Q&A episode, and I mean, I could just chat with you for an hour, and
I
I think
know.
that'd be awesome too.
I was like, wow, that wasn't really an introduction. I got to get better at this.
It's my fault. Maybe we could just throw in a couple questions and
Right,
see if
right,
we can help
right,
some people. Okay, so Jennifer asks how to get her partner on board with unschooling. What do you have to say to those people struggling to get a partner?
I was just thinking about that one actually, because it all boils down to fear, right? And
Yes.
so we all start at kind of a fearful place when we're doing something different. And we usually in a relationship, one person, your spouse doesn't read as much about it as you do, or the co-parent isn't as into the educational aspect or the whatever aspect. They're not diving in. You, the parent that's diving in and listening to podcasts like this, you are alleviating your fear. You're getting the information you need. So, because that's how we conquer fear. We get more information, we get more
Yes.
support. And so we're doing that, and our fear is kind of getting under control. And then we look over at this co-parent who hasn't done that and is still way back there, fearful. And so the answer is, first of all, have a little compassion because they haven't done the legwork you've done. That's just the truth. And the other part is find out what the fear is, because it's going to be different. I can't say, here's the formula for how to conquer fear in a husband. There's no such thing. But I can tell you that different spouses have different concerns based upon their own lived experience. So when they are afraid, how are they going to get a career that can pay enough to have a family? Okay, that's one question that we've got to deal with. Or maybe it is, I learned so much because I was on the soccer team in high school. I learned about teamwork and collaboration, and they won't get to have that experience. So then we get to look at, well, is that really true? Because that's what we do with all fear, right? We got to look at, it's like turning on the light and seeing in the closet, it was really just a hanger with something on it. There wasn't really a boogeyman in there. So we turn on the light and we say, what's the real fear? And is it true? And it's not true that soccer only lives at school. That team sports only happen in a school situation, or collaborative activities only happen if you go to school. That's not true. So he just needs some information. That spouse that has that particular fear, we want to talk about where do you get those kinds of experiences? And maybe your kid is not as into it as you were, because that's the other thing to remember, is that one size fits all that we grew up with doesn't always fit our kid.
Yeah.
We think that was the way it has to be. And as we break it apart, because we listen to podcasts and we read things and we watch things and we're watching our kid, because often we're the ones right there in front of them where we can get the immediate reaction of like, oh, okay. they're not getting that because often they're the ones that are working outside the home, although not during COVID. They've been right here front and center. But they, they just still have those fears. So we have to listen to them and see what the fears are. And really what I would recommend is, just like any time, all humans just want to be heard. That's the bottom line. We want the people that love us to listen to us. And so instead of, as soon as that first question comes out of his mouth, and here you are with the answers, don't do that. Just let him talk. Let him say what his fears are. And then say, all right, I'm going to find some more information and we'll see. And it's that idea of when we're partnering with people, we have to recognize they have fears. And so figure out what specifically is it and how can we manage it. And maybe it's going to be the kind of thing that we have to modify a little bit. Sometimes we have parents who are like, they can't just be on the computer all day long. We've got to see some other things. Okay. Oh yeah, I know, that's concerning. And then next thing you know, you can create a little Facebook page, or you just send texts with pictures of them doing other cool things. Look at him measuring the stuff right off the back of the cake box. Look at him playing in the mud. Look at him, show him the other things that they're doing, because often they're just left out and they don't know. And so then their fears take a hold of them, because when you don't know, that void can get filled with fear really fast. So that's my quick answer.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I wrote down like fears and hopes, like basically the same thing. Like what's stopping them is a whole bunch of fears, and you got to shine a light on them and
Right.
get into them and address them and get to know them. And then the same thing on the hope side, like what are your hopes and dreams for what this kid might be able to do in their lives.
And sometimes it helps to hear about grown unschoolers and to see it. I have a book that's called Homeschooled Teens, and I interviewed 75 young people from 15 to 39 who had an unconventional teen years as far as education goes. And they shared how they made friends, how they learned, what their careers are now, those kinds of stories. And, I wrote that 5 or 6 years ago. So those kinds of stories are big. They're around, and you can maybe, someday we'll have conferences again. And they often have grown unschooler panels where you can listen in, and how do those kids talk and how interesting that is. And, but in the meantime, you can get the book. Because I did it all based on the common questions people have. How are they gonna learn? Where are they gonna learn?
So helpful.
Do they hate their mom at the end? People worry about that, and they don't. They actually feel really grateful they had a great childhood.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And like a healthy dose of like, let's just try it. Like, let's just try it and see what happens. Like, we can always go back to school.
It's always there.
Like, yeah, let's just try it. And like, I worked with a family not too long ago where there were two unmarried, like unpartnered co-parents, and so we worked out, like, since that other parent wasn't physically present like during the week, we worked out, okay, so you guys will have like a shared Google Doc, and each week you will upload like how many pictures with a 1-sentence caption explaining what they're doing. Would you, other co-parent, would you need to feel like, oh, okay, I can see it now, like I understand what's going on, like how many would you need? 3. Okay, so 3 photos each week with like a 1-sentence caption, explaining what's going on for them and what they're learning in that moment, or what they're, what sparked their interest in that moment. Like, so there can be like some collaborating there, just like we do with our kids, with our co-parents, to try and, like you said, address all of those fears that they might be having, and to fill in that void that might get taken over.
Because we know that with fear, the more you don't address it, the bigger it gets.
Yeah.
So if you add those pictures multiple times, then all of a sudden that slowly rising fear, down. And it's slowly rising fear, down. Because they saw another picture, or they just felt included. Sometimes it has to do with that they feel like Well, you guys are having a great time, but I'm odd man out.
Yeah. Yeah. And even in like a somewhat contentious, co-parenting situation, like this solution came about because they couldn't have like respectful conversations face to
Oh,
face. So
yeah.
like even in the most challenging of situations, like there is like you can come together with another
Right.
human being and like address the fears and create a plan that's in the best interest of your
Right.
kid.
Right.
Okay, so I mentioned being able to go back to school, and Danae wants to know what to do if her daughter says she wants to go to school. And I think there are really two parts to this question. Should she let her, and will she even be able to?
Okay. Well, it's going to depend. My answer is going to depend on how old they are. Because if they're younger, I often say, um, spruce up your unschooling a little. Do more fun things. What do they want to do? Because you really want to find out what is it about school that they want. Because maybe they
Yes.
just want a lunchbox. Maybe they just would like you to get one of those metal lockers. Okay. Maybe they need a lock. or those, remember those, I don't even know that they sell these anymore, but they used to be those notebooks that you opened it up by three.
Trapper keeper?
Well, it flapped over and then the other one
Yes.
flapped over on top of it. And it was kind of like an organizer notebook.
Yes.
And it had like cool kitties on it or something.
Trapper keeper, yes.
Yeah. And so maybe that's really all they want. And so if that's the case, and let's get to the beach. Let's do a trip. Let's have a great messy project. I'm so glad we get to do these things. Maybe that's kind of your wake up call that this living needs to have a little more sparkle. And sometimes that can happen. Like I did an Instagram poll one time, and like 70% of the unschooling moms that took the poll were introverts. And so if you have an introverted parent and an extroverted kid, you're going to have to do a little management. You're going to have to figure out, how can I help get my needs met and their need met? So you might want to see, what is it that needs to happen? Do we need to find some other activities? Do we need to widen our circle a little bit? Now, sometimes that social aspect of it, it's because we're in a pandemic, so let's not assume that this is how it's always going to be. It's not. And we'll just widen our circle as we can. But so back to the question about the school part. So if they're little, I tend to think, I'm so glad we get to have sleepovers in the middle of the week. Sometimes it takes talking like that. I mean, not with that weird voice, but that kind of seed dropping of what kinds of cool things get to happen because we have freedom, because that's really the thing, is that it's pretty great to get to have a lot of freedom. But it's not the end of the world if they have to go to school. I remember always worrying, well, what if they had to? What if something happened and they don't even know the capital? They don't know their times tables. Mine always knew their threes times tables because they were Girl Scouts and they sold Girl Scout cookies. So they could do 3, 6, 9, 12. Anyway, so relevance, again, that's about relevance.
Yes.
It was relevant in their life, so they memorized it. And but I will tell you that my 15-year-old, my youngest, once the older two had moved out, this very loud house suddenly was kind of quiet. And comparatively, we still had Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears blasting. And she said, she'd done competitive cheerleading, because you can be a cheerleader. You don't have to go to school. She did that for a while. And she said, I want to be on a drill team and dance at a halftime. But then, I just don't think I'm smart enough to do it. And I'm like, oh, screech on my brakes, like, that is not true. You're certainly smart enough to do it. And we can go over there and see what it would be. And she's like, what, really? I'm like, yeah, let's just go. And so she, at 15, went to high school. She did not know her times tables. She had only been reading for a few years. She was just my least academic of all three kids. And she wasn't really going for the academic experience, but she wanted to go kinda, but she was a little fearful, and I was really more inclined to deal with the fearfulness than than anything else.
Yeah.
So much so that we had to have because she's texting me and all right, we just took school on our own terms. And so one time the principal was like, she can't text you. And I'm like, well, no, she can. and I said, I should probably lay the cards on the table here. I'm not a fan. I don't want this experience for her, but she wants it. So we're doing it. And this is how we're going to do it. And, when you can kind of get over your own being called into the principal and you're in charge because this is your child and your cards trump their cards.
Yes.
And when you remember that and you walk in there like that, then they're like, okay, it'll be fine. We'll work it out. I'm like, I'm sure you will. Find a way. And she went for a year and a half, did her drill team thing, discovered that 150 girls on a drill team is a heck of a lot of drama. And she had interesting insight about it, that she was she's, I have an option to be here. I know at any day I can come home. I can be done. This is, we referred to everything through their whole lives, all their lives as this is just an experiment. We're just going to see. It doesn't mean it's over. The minute something goes wrong, we might modify it or we might skip it. And that was how we dealt with school. And she says, but those kids, they don't have an option. And that's why they act like this.
Yeah.
Because they're stuck. I'm like, yeah, you ready to be done? I'm ready to travel. Let's go. And so she did about a year and a half. It's like she did some time. And it was a good experience as far as getting the opportunity to do it. But for those people that worry about what if they're not academically prepared to go, don't worry about it. They give you the information, and then on Friday they quiz you. All you have to do is listen.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened for community college experiences when you hadn't had any academic background, and they teach you what you need to know. And or really, let's rephrase that. They teach you what they're going to test you on.
Yes. Nice.
And, it's a little different. Yes. And so she did fine. She algebra was weird because they had this insane curving system that you took the test. So to be honest, she takes the test, she studied for it, but it wasn't clicking for her. And she took the test, she made a 40, she gets to retest with an open book and the teacher helping, and you can get up to a 70. Bingo, 70, everybody gets a C. And she's like, I like this.
Nice.
I'm like, well, they're just moving them along. It's a conveyor belt, and they've got to find a way. And the teachers adored her. They're like, man, she makes eye contact with us. I'm like, yeah, she doesn't think you're the enemy.
Exactly.
But she says, man, the teachers think you're the enemy. The teachers think you're lying. You've got to be lying. You're like, no, I'm not.
And you're trying to get out of work.
Minimum, whatever's yeah. It was so funny because she's such a people person and always had been. And and this has nothing to do with the question, but she had this biology teacher that the class was kind of running amok. And the teacher, she says, the teacher started tearing up. And she said, I looked at her, and she's like 3 rows back. We made eye contact. I can see she's tearful. And I mouth, are you okay? And the teacher wrote me and she said, oh my God, I don't know what this girl, but she was so kind. Oh. And I was having a moment. And it was more important to her to be kind to me than to align with everybody else that was, going nuts in the room. And I thought, that's unschooling, darling.
Yeah.
That's understanding that people are people. and they have their own stuff going on. And we got to have those kinds of conversations all the time that were, it's not that kids don't have struggles on a playground or in little groups of friends. Those things happen. And the difference is you get to be right there to help them problem solve. Well, how do you think that made them feel? Well, what would happen? What could we do differently? And so we were living a life like that instead of the typical life that you have struggles in a classroom. And by 3 o'clock, you're worn out. It's hot. You have a long drive home and you don't feel like talking about it. And so it doesn't work like that when you have the flexibility to have conversations with kids right there and then. Okay. But circling back to the question, they will be all right if they have to go to school. She did have to take a couple of, they were called credit by exam, which allowed her to learn the material and then be tested on it. She only had to make a 70. She made a 75. Good enough. We memorized all the stuff for the geography class, all the stuff for the world history class, because she wanted to go in as a sophomore at 15. So she kind of did, and then she did summer school on both sides of it. So she did freshman and sophomore year in 2 years. The younger grades, they're just going to put you in the grade that is your age.
Yeah.
That's just how that goes. And so I wouldn't worry about it. And then I also would, another thing that was just kind of a piece of information that's good to know is you're not an accredited school, so it doesn't matter if you say, well, we did this Khan Academy and we did this Saxon 5 point whatever they are, and they don't care. It's not accredited. It doesn't count. So you're like, you mean all that headbutting that we did to get through that stuff to prepare for our future school experience was worthless? And maybe even worse than that, it had like a negative impact on the relationship. Yeah. So don't spend every minute connecting with them so that they're the kid that says to the teacher, are you okay? Because that matters so much more than if they know the capital of Georgia.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I could not agree more. For this question, like what I wrote down is, what is the need she's experiencing that she thinks school will solve? So I love that you addressed that right out of the gate too. A lot of times our kids will say, I want to go to school because they think that that's the solution to some need that they're having, because that's like the mainstream.
Right. Alyssa thought it was going to be like the Lizzie McGuire show.
Yes. My kid watched High School Musical and was like,
oh, there you go. Aren't we all going to dance in the hallway? Come on.
Yes.
Quickly, you had 3 minutes and they didn't care whether your classes were close together. And in fact, so you were like one end of the school, the other end of the school. You were running to get from one classroom to the next. There's no time just hanging out at the lockers.
No choreographed dance numbers in between.
Oh, if only.
And yes, the school like legally cannot deny you entry. I mean,
right.
So
Exactly.
if your kid wants, yes,
even if you're a renter, your landlord pays the tax. So it's the way of it.
Yes. So if your kid ever truly does want to go to school, or you guys have a need for them to go to school, they always can't. The door.
And always remember that you're in charge. You're still the child's advocate. I don't care. You getting called into the principal, you're a grown up. You're not a kid in school anymore. Don't fall back into that. Oh my God. No. You just remember, this is just like any other, you're going to be civil, but let's be clear.
They work for you.
My child, not yours.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that they work for you. I've had a lot of conversations with parents about that, with pediatricians as well. Like,
yes.
Actually, they work for you.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes you have to be really direct.
Yes.
Say, I'm not a fan. But that's okay. They got used to us.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about technology.
Okay.
What if all your kid wants to do is stare at a screen?
Oh my goodness. Well, technology, when we look at it like that, it sounds like one big monolith. And in fact, it's not. Technology is connecting them with other people. And here we are in a pandemic, and don't we all need that?
Yeah.
And
I need this conversation right now, Sue.
yeah. And I think that the other part is, I mean, there's just so many parts, but when we take the time, when we are not just so overcome with fear that we can't even look, or that we just immediately are looking for some confirmation bias that, oh, there they are on their phone again, oh, there they are on the computer again, oh, okay, we got to get out of that loop. Instead, we have to prioritize connecting with them. What are they doing? Can you play too? Because if you can play too, you can see all the math in Minecraft, or you can see all of the spelling that's happening as they try to figure out how to chat or look something up. Just the other day, Jackson's asking me, how do you spell, what did he call it? I don't know, some Minecraft thing. and so he's writing it all in, texting, all right, I'm looking for the such and such egg.
Yeah.
And so they're learning to spell. It may not be the spelling list you had in mind, but it's one that matters to them, and it will stick with them. The spelling list you had in mind may not, because it's not even relevant.
Yeah.
They're going to learn words like subscribe, on and off, and all those different things. But so for technology, when you start to think about all the different things that they can do on technology, maybe they're researching. Maybe that idea of, I can't figure out what to do on Minecraft, so I'll go watch some YouTube videos of some other guy that's doing some cool things, and maybe I'll be able to do it. And even if in their mind they're not saying, Mom, I'm going to start researching, it's what they're doing conceptually. And they're learning that they don't know how to do something, they can go looking around and see somebody else that does and learn from it. And that's a great tool. That's a great skill to develop. And so we have to start, we can't fall back on that checklist in 7 subjects. Those things aren't going to serve us. Instead, we have to look, if we're still kind of in a deschooling phase, which most people are like their whole lives. But if you are still thinking about where's the learning, take a look at the things they're doing and see what subjects are weaving through it, and you'll be surprised. The other part is we get into this habit of vilifying technology.
Yes.
And that's going to be problematic when it comes to, if you want to prioritize a connection with your child, you can't vilify the thing they love to do, because then you're making them choose. And that's really not nice, but it's not even necessary. It's like a buffet. There's a whole bunch of stuff up there, and maybe the first time they go, all they do is load their plate up with cheese and strawberries. Okay. Eventually they'll try other things. And the other part too to remember is, we get caught up in that story of that all they do is technology, and we need to start looking for examples of when they do something else, so that we can sit. So many times I've talked to families and they say, all he does is technology. And then we just got home from Taekwondo, and then we went to the park, and then we were at the library, and all he does is technology. You're like, what about these other things you're saying that he's doing? What they're really meaning is that when he gets home, he gets on his technology because that's what he likes to do. In the same way that lots of people come home from work and get on TV, people do that sometimes. And sometimes it's just to relax. Sometimes it's just to kind of have a breather from stuff that was maybe hard to do during the day. And then the flip side of that, because I could talk about technology forever, the flip side is people think, oh, they're never going to develop grit. That word, they're never going to learn how to do anything they don't want to do. All you have to do is play a little bit of computer games, and you can see you have to do a lot of things you don't want to do to get to the next level. and you want the next level. So you do the things.
Frustration tolerance.
Exactly.
I don't have the grit for video games. I'm just going to throw that.
Well, you may not, and that's okay because you can have it in other things. You know what? You have the grit for figuring out how to make a podcast work.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
because it matters to you. And so why would your experience be so much better than their experience? And so we have to remember we're not putting that genie back in the bottle as far as technology is concerned. And the world is moving in that direction. So let's move with them so that we can help them navigate. So that when they kind of have a, you know, you just threw the remote because you got frustrated. Let's talk about frustration. Let's figure out how can it do you always get frustrated like 10 minutes before lunchtime? Do we need to move lunchtime a little sooner so that you're not that hangry feeling at the end of the game? Or to recognize what's the difference between a kid that starts to lose at Hi Ho Cheerio, the board game, and throws the board. Because that happens and nobody says, oh, those board games, you know, that really brings out the worst in my child. Nobody says that. But you'll do it if they threw the remote control on the technology, because technology is something you don't know. And it's time to know it. It's time to get in there and figure it out so that we know what we're talking about. Because sure, there are things on YouTube that you probably don't want them to watch. And there are ways to manage it. You know, you don't have to just like put all the locks on and everything, but you can do things like, and this is what I learned because, you know, it was just, my kids weren't really, my kids were of the age of MySpace. Tells you where we were with this. But I learned that for YouTube, the more you like and subscribe certain things, the more it gives you those. Correct. Because it's just the way algorithms work. So if you have a curious kid going down other rabbit holes, that's what it's going to give you more of. Yeah. But if you say, oh, look, he's into Blippi, and we like Blippi all over the place. And next thing you know, there's some Teletubbies or there's whatever, you know, and it keeps it kind of in that same framework. And that will help you. The other part to remember, because a lot of people are afraid of this, is that they think about, they're going to get exposed to bad people. And so what you want to do is have a lot of conversations with them about what to do if that happens. Well, if you have been so anti-technology, you're not going to be the person they're going to come to. And you want to be their person. So that means you have to, oh yeah, I just start moving in that direction so that you don't vilify it. If you vilify it, then they just lost a really helpful person that could have helped them navigate. Because that's your goal, really, is to figure out, how can I help you navigate? Yeah. And we get afraid because we don't even know how to navigate. Well, then it's time. we got to figure it out a little bit.
Yes. If you villainize technology, you are villainizing yourself.
Yeah. You are really going to push yourself out of the equation.
Yeah.
You know, and that is that's not your goal. You know, your goal is to be able to share those words of wisdom. Yeah. But if they think you don't get it, and, you know, and that starts early, you know, they don't suddenly at 15 feel that way about you. It had to do with all those years at 8 and 9 and 10 of how did you handle their choices. And when you are with them and they can share with you, this is making me uncomfortable, or what do I do? This creepy guy. Yeah. You're like, man, those creepy guys, instead of just fold it up. Alert. I know inside we're screaming that, but we have to figure out how do we deal with that? Yes. And and sometimes what it means is that we have to create a community that we talk with, of other people that are also open-minded about technology. Because that was the other thing I was going to say. If you clamp down and you say, we're not doing that in our house, they'll do it in somebody else's. And then you won't be there for them. And I remember, I mean, and lots of times, there were times that we had no TV, that we would just have it for a year that we're like, nah. And we were just doing other things and it was fine. And then there were years that we were like totally into it. And when you realize these are just things that we get to play with, and we are not zombified by it, it's not. I think of that Social Dilemma movie
Mm-hmm.
where it's like there's three puppet masters running our lives. I mean, yes, there's marketing. I'm not going to lie. There's marketing that is always after you, but it's not like they're puppet mastering. You can turn it off.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Even in an unschooling world, you don't necessarily have to say, well, I love unschooling, so I have to be, everybody can do anything all the time. Don't go into it like that.
I think the difference is just that as unschoolers, we connect with our kids from a place of like being allies and where we're open to collaboration. So we
Right.
can come to them and say, hey, I'm noticing that has been feeling really hard for you.
Right.
And like, how can I help? Like, what changes can we make that might better support your needs around this thing? Like
Right.
that conversation is very different than like, see, you're just glued to the screen all the time and it's bringing out the worst in you and we just need to not have it.
Right. And there are little things like if you've got kids that are kind of antsy, they can sit on those balls that they have to kind of like jiggle their hips a little bit and they can move around, or you could walk up behind them and give them a little neck rub. Or even in my son's case, he played a lot of World of Warcraft. And every now and then he'd look up and he'd have this little bloodshot vein in his eye. And I'd say, dude, red eye. And he's like, okay. And so he'd take a break. And it resolves, it's just eye strain. And you just, instead of saying, that's it must be World of Warcraft. No, it's just, you are super intense. And you probably would have had it if you were reading a book that close, for a long period of time. And that's the other part you want to think about. If you had a kid that was super into anything, would you feel the same way? And the huge advantage of technology is that it brings so much information into their world. And especially during a pandemic when it's hard to get out and get exposed to a lot of things, it is a really great tool to figure out. And maybe you need the computer in the living room. Maybe you need to do things that just help everybody feel more comfortable with it, and to recognize that where you start isn't necessarily where you finish. That
it can evolve.
That's that way for all of parenting though, right? That you learn more. You are not the parent you started out as, and the kid gets maturity. Maturity is a thing. It's real, and they get older and they see your point of view, or they develop a different point of view and they shift a little bit. And what was really important before as an immature 7-year-old is not as important to them as a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old. It's just, and that's why, again, partnering and connecting and keeping those communication lines open so that they can share where they are, because we can't like peel their hair back and see where they are in their heads. We have only what we see, and only what if we can create a trusting environment, then they can share with us. But if we create a critical environment, and sometimes we create that and we don't even know we're doing it. It's just one of those kind of side eye, like, oh, it's a pretty day out, but I guess you want to play on the computer. That's bad. That's not really,
passive aggressive.
It is. I mean, we have to just kind of call it what it is. We have to try to remember that beautiful sunshiny day may not matter to them today. And that's okay.
And like yesterday was the spring equinox. And so I excitedly gathered all my kids and went outside and twirled around and greeted the spring, and was super clear. Like, Like, I am so excited to greet the spring, and I would love for you to join me. Like, just being clear that like
Right.
this is my thing. Like, it's you're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
Like, this is
Right.
just a need that I'm having, and are you willing to join me in meeting this need?
Right. And they usually are.
Yes.
It's not like my mom would go outside and play and lock the screen door.
Mine too. Yep.
It's not the same when we can, and that's a really good point too, Rachel, that we can embrace life with exuberance, with cheerfulness, with enthusiasm. And yes, some days we don't feel that, but we need to work towards it, because then that helps them greet life similarly, as
Yeah.
something to be excited about. It is, a lot of people wish they had longer. And I think that we just have to, and we have to recognize that as the person that's around them a lot, to be enthusiastic about the life that's happening right here in our home and in our backyard and in our really close community. um, that has a huge effect. It could be like, oh yeah, here we go.
And
Or we can.
if we are respectful of the things that they are really interested in,
Mhm.
and we're willing to hold the space and to just be respectful for a video game they're really into or whatever it is, then
Right.
when we have things that feel really meaningful to us, they are totally willing to honor them, like in that
You've modeled
same.
it. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll add, like, in our house, like I have this bucket system class where we like set intentions each season for things we want to learn and do and
Mhm.
practice. And that helps me to like bring in the materials they need or sign them up for the class they want to
Right.
take or whatnot. And we also have like household things on there and like self-care things and whatnot. And for me, that has helped me a lot to get to be fully like supportive of the technology pieces, that like as long as I know that like these few things that you've said are really important to you, or something that is really important to me, like you take this medicine, I don't know, because
Yeah.
you have this condition. And so
Right.
like as long as I know like that stuff is done, then that allows me to like
Right.
relax and like
Right.
not worry about the rest, and to really be able to like just lean into the trust and trust that it'll all shake out, and just be fully supportive of it. And so I think it's that like connection, collaboration, relationship thing, like that if you're being respectful and you can both come together and just meet each other in this like shared respectful space, then it does go both ways.
Right, right. I make these unschooling guides. They're like 10 or $15. And I have one that's for brainstorming time. And it's like 20 different things that you might want to do in your community.
Mm.
I'm not explaining it very well. Because this is the funny part about it. I made it at the start of 2020 as if 20 was gonna matter.
Oh my gosh.
But it was like hikes and why it matters, and here where could we go. And so what you can do with your kids is look at that and think, oh, I hadn't thought about that with cooking or with hiking or with um cleaning up the environment nearby. Maybe we're just going to swing into the park with a trash bag and pick up some trash. And we can prioritize those things that we might have like forgotten about, that just didn't
Yes.
cross our line of sight. But I liked this brainstorming guide because it pulled things up like self-care and things that you might not have. Oh, yeah. We have to remember that. So I had clients who had printed out certain pages that the kids wanted to be sure to do. And they created this thing that I thought was so cool. They had an idea wall, and that you could just tape things up on the wall.
Mhm.
And so say you found some cool thing that's only an hour away from home, and you tape that flyer up on the wall, or you tape a post-it note that says, I want to, help me remember, I want to try to walk 3 days a week. And you do it too. You're trying to put your thing, and it just becomes an idea wall that everybody's, oh yeah, that'd be cool. Oh, don't include me on that one. Or
Hard
whatever,
pass.
that you just get to have that realistic way of approaching life together as a family.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you and I talked when I sent you the outline because I had like a dozen questions. You
And I was like, do you have 6 days to talk? How many days do we have?
So I think we've touched on like 2, maybe 3 of them. So I don't know. I may have to like try and entice you into.
You know
coming
what,
back on
Rachel? I
again.
would love it. I would love it, love it, love it. I'd be
Okay.
like, we're going to have a quarterly chat with Sue.
I love it.
Because they'll get tired of me. But
Okay, let's move into our deep dive. So the show notes can be found at sagefamily.com/podcast58, where you can also subscribe and get future show notes sent right to your inbox. So this is where you get to share with us, Sue, your favorite resources for people to dive deeper into this topic of unschooling.
I have 2 websites. I have unschoolingmomtomom.com with the number 2. And that's a collaborative site that has lots of different unschoolers' writings. So that's cool with lots of drop downs from the top bar that helps you dive into more topics that are giving you a little grief on keeping you from embracing unschooling or just a lack of information. You just need that. And then my SuePatterson.com website is my coaching site where I have group coaching and I have email guidance coaching and unschooling guides that talk about, how do they learn to read? How do they learn math? What about socialization? What's a typical day like? Things like that. And so there's a bunch of guides. I have a course called Jumping into Unschooling. If you really want to do this and you want a really strong foundation, that's an awesome way to go. And so those are my 2 big unschooling resources, the SuePatterson.com and Unschooling Mom to Mom.
I'm going to link to all of those yummy things. And I
Wonderful.
still have not read your book. I just heard about it the other day in an interview you did, and so I added it to my reading list. So I am looking forward to reading it myself because I'm like right there on the cusp of
digital
two.
now too. Pam Laricchia does a publishing company and she converted it to be digital for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that's available. But I have seen you show those books, and I thought, oh, I need Rachel to show my book.
Yeah. Yes, you got to tell me. I didn't know about it. You got to let me know.
I will.
Thank you so much.
I'm just not that great on the marketing end. I can talk about unschooling all the time, and then I'm like, oh, I didn't really tell you how to.
Yeah. No, I've literally gone on podcasts and had great conversations, and then realized afterwards, like, oh, I didn't tell them anything about like where to find me or what I do.
Exactly. How can I help afterwards? Oh, I don't know.
No, I totally hear you. That is literally why I have this deep dive section, because I know I often forget to do that.
I love
so, like,
it.
I want to hold this space for you to share
Thank you
good
so
things that you
much.
offer.
Oh, and I do have a new podcast. I have 10 episodes up.
What?
So
What's
it's
it called?
over at Buzzsprout. I
Okay.
don't know what I'm doing at all, but I did an audio. I did a podcast for my group coaching clients, and I started it in August, and I did one every week, and it was just for the private clients. And then I thought, wait, I think everybody would like this. And so I decided to put them over there, like 5-minute pep talks of just a little bit of a topic, whether it has to do what is unschooling and why you got to use that word, and and the kind of things that people ask. And a lot of people, at least in my world, only have about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so they love longer podcasts, but they have to break them up into multiple sections because there's just not always time. And I thought, you just need a little Monday morning pep talk.
Yeah. Oh, I
So
love
that's
that
what I
idea.
have. Currently, it's at Spotify. I don't know how to get it in iTunes, but it's unschoolingmomtomom.buzzsprout.com. So currently,
I am going to seek it out and find it. And
and maybe you can help me figure out how to put it in iTunes.
I can definitely help with that. We'll take that tech
know
talk.
how to do podcasts, Rachel. You're so good at it.
Well, thank you. Yes, I can definitely help you with that.
Yay!
Carry that conversation over off the air. Sue, thank you so much for joining me. I am definitely going to have you back so we can answer another truck full of
I
questions.
love it. I love it. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was great. I knew it would be.